Hi, I'm Craig Thomas. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi everyone, I'm John Liebman. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. We are on location at Colorado State University 2015 International Society of Bassists Convention. And I am here with Craig Thomas, a bass player. How are you, Craig?
I'm fine, thank you, John.
I think the first time we ever met was at an ISB convention in New York around 1990.
1990, that is correct. Yes.
Yes.
NYU.
Yes, that was a good one. Well, boy, you've done so much cool stuff and so many cool things. I remember you played on the Standing in the Shadows of Motown compilation.
That is correct. Yes. I got a chance to do James Jamerson, which some people don't know. He became very famous for playing the electric bass, but some of the early recordings that Jamerson did were on acoustic, and I recreated one of those for the book.
And it's great. It's a great compilation, and you must be very proud to be.
It's after it was completed, Alan Slutsky gave me a plaque with a little gold thing on the bottom to Craig Thomas for helping the memory of James Jamerson survive, and that's very proudly displayed on the wall at home. Absolutely.
Yes. Well, that's certainly worth treasuring. You've done a lot of great jazz gigs. You've played with some really cool people. You were at Pat Martino for a while,
Yes.
I know, and Jimmy Bruno, and you were in Atlantic City. But why don't I have you tell the story? You're from the, I guess I'd call it Metro Philly, even though it was South New Jersey.
Well, yeah, where I live is, what do they call it, the bedroom of Philadelphia, maybe 10 or 15 minutes the other side of the Delaware River in southern New Jersey. And that's where I've always lived.
Such a rich musical heritage where you were
a
growing.
lot of bass players came from that area.
Sure
Stanley Clarke, Charles Fambro, and the list goes on and on. A lot of great bass players came out of Philadelphia, and so there was some stuff to learn from there. Absolutely.
Well, so tell me about your musical upbringing, growing up in that surrounding area. How did you come to be a musician?
Well, I think, which is true for many people, my father played the trumpet and was into jazz, and my oldest brother was a jazz lover, amateur saxophonist, but very talented. And when I was a kid, they turned me on to their recordings that they had, and I didn't even know what the bass looked like. My father played an Oscar Peterson trio record for me with Ray Brown on it, and I heard that, and I said to him, "What is that? What instrument makes that sound?" And he said, "Oh, that's a bass." And I'm 15 years old, so I want to play one. I have to have a bass. Get me a bass. And the journey began then. And there was a place in Philadelphia then. They don't exist anymore in the same way. Like a supper club, nightclub, where you would go have dinner and see a show. It was called Palumbo's, and it's not there anymore. And it helped put me through college, music school. I got the job there, like 50 weeks a year. We were playing little shows. Some of them were small acts that weren't that famous, but Mel Torme came in a few times, and I got to play with him, and it really, things started to take off after that. I started to get better and better calls, and I was playing jazz all through that time, at least some of the time.
Tell me about Atlantic City. I know you did a pretty good stretch there.
Oh yes, I was there, I guess, from about 1980 to the end of that decade. Most of the decade of the 80s, I was very busy. At that time, the entertainment scene down there was really intense, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. Sometimes I was playing 2 jobs a day. And it was really wild. And some of it was the classic production show with dancing girls and all that sort of thing. But then I also got to play for some great star acts, some of which left memorable impressions and are pretty healthy parts of the resume now. You know.
Well, give us a good story or two.
Okay, here's the best one. I might as well just go right for it. In about 1986, there was a casino called the Golden Nugget, and Frank Sinatra was due to appear there for a week. Now, he had a rhythm section bass player who was traveling with him, but they needed another bass player for the string section. They had an arco bass part to be played, and a friend of mine was one of the violinists, and I got recommendation and got the call, so I went to do it. Well, he was pretty intense. He's there listening to the rehearsal. He attended all the rehearsals, every minute of it. We rehearsed for 2 days before the first show. And anyway, I'm on a riser all the way in the back of the orchestra, about as far from Mr. Sinatra as I could possibly be. Well, one day we're rehearsing, we're on a short intermission, sitting around talking, and I feel somebody tugging at my pant leg. You know, the riser put me maybe 3 or 4 feet up in the air, so a person standing on the ground would be down that low. So if somebody gets a hold of the cuff of my pants and tugs on it, and I go, what's this? And I look around and look down, and it's Frank Sinatra. And he says to me, young man, I had 4 bass players to play that part at Carnegie Hall last week. You're doing a wonderful job, and I'm going to have them crank up your microphone. Great job. I said, thank you very much, Mr. Sinatra. And for the rest of that week, if I drift by his dressing room backstage, he would wave or say hello, or, you know.
Too bad you can't frame that experience and hang it on the wall also.
Oh boy, I wish I could. 2008, we've gone ahead in time, and in the mid-90s, I hooked up with this guitarist named Jimmy Bruno, who was originally in Philadelphia and was in Vegas for a while, California for a while, came back to Philly, and he was recording for Concord Jazz Records, and I started to work with him. I did 4 albums with him. I wrote music for his records, and in 2008, they had a little jazz festival in Vail, Colorado. Well, John Clayton is also there. He was working with the kids and playing concerts and doing all sorts of things that they had going on there. And he says to me, would you like to use mine? He had brought his bass in a trunk from L.A. And I said, oh, how nice. Thank you, John. You know, not thinking much more about it. So when it's getting ready for me to play my first set, we get the bass over, and I unzip the case, take the case off the bass, and then I look at it. And I stopped him in mid-sentence. Wait a minute. What do we have here? The bass had a very unusual looking top. It had some vertical lines in the wood that you could see right away. And I recognized it in an instant. I said, is this what I think it is? And John said, yes, Craig, it's Ray Brown's bass. I recognized it from a number of album covers and things like that. So for a 3-day weekend, I had an out-of-body experience playing with the bass of one of my idols. As I had said a few minutes ago, I heard that record of Ray Brown. I'm 15 years old, and then now I get to play the instrument that was used on that recording myself for 3 days. So that was really deep.
That's very special.
I recall calling every bass player I knew in Philadelphia. I ran up a cell phone bill you wouldn't believe. That first day, saying, guess whose bass I am using? And they all fell out. They couldn't believe it. It was great.
Yeah, that's a great story. Tell me about your equipment.
You know, amplifying the double bass is always a challenge. It's hard to get a sound. Every bass player who's looking at this is going to go, oh yeah, I've been there. And I've tried a lot of amps and pickups and stuff. And also, as I'm getting to be a little bit of an older man, I don't want to carry too much. I want it to be portable too. So that's a tough sell, to get portability, but yet still get a nice sound out of the bass. So I started this is another Jimmy Bruno story. I was playing at a jazz festival in New York with Jimmy Bruno and did not take my amp. It was amplifier du jour. I had the bass, but I just amp du jour now. And I used this amp that I had never seen before, and I liked it. And here comes this man named Bud Henriksen from Colorado, also from Colorado, and he says to me, you like that, Craig? I said, I love it. It's one of the nicest acoustic bass sounds I've gotten out of an amp in a long time. Really, and he was a very gracious gentleman. And he said to me, he's no longer with us, but he was a beautiful guy. He said to me, give me a paragraph from my website and it'll show up on your front step. And sure enough, it did. And I have used it almost exclusively ever since. That's several years now. And it's a great little amp, the 12-inch. I got the separate head and cabinet so that if I wanted to use a different speaker cabinet with the head, I could do it. You know, the combo amps are nice too, but I decided I'd go that route. And so it's a 12, and they're the Henriksen Jazz Amp head, and it's great and very light and very powerful. And one of the other things that bass players go through with equipment is what happens when you have to put the bass into the board, into the PA system. What kind of success do you get? And the DI, the XLR out from this particular amp head sounds great, and sound men love it. I've had good luck with it.
Well, great. How about the future, Craig? You've done so much. You mentioned Mel Torme and Jimmy Bruno and Frank Sinatra. Those are just a very few on a very long list. I know Pat Martino you played with for quite a while and so many others. What about the future? What else would you like to do that you haven't already done, having done so much already?
I've done some recordings with other people, but I've never put out an album under my own name. So I suppose that remains to be done. And I have some things in the can, as the saying goes. I have some tracks that I could already use, but that probably would be a good project for me to do, to complete that.
Keep it up. It's great catching up with you.
Thank you, John.
And let's not wait 25 years before we do it again, eh?
No, we better not.
Right. From the 2015 International Society of Bassists Convention on the campus of Colorado State University. With Craig Thomas, I am John Liebman. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.